Hello everyone, I'm Max from Canada, but I live in Thailand with my wife in the countryside of Thailand, and it's getting super hot right now, 42 Celsius. It's about to be raining season. There's snake everywhere. My wife is afraid. She's taking care of the dog right now. We have 12 dogs, so lately it's been so hot and she's more tired, burning out a little bit. So I'm taking over, reacting alone. But if you have buy me a coffee suggestion, link in the description, and you want me or my wife and I to react to something for your suggestion, we can do it really quickly, even together, yes. Especially food and vlog, because my wife is into that kind of stuff. She's not really into music lately, but yes, if you have suggestion, please let us know, yes. In the meantime, why Sweden is so good at startup, I have no idea. Let's go.
As you might already know, Europe doesn't do that well with startups. In the 50 years between 1975
Really?
and 2025, for instance, Europe produced just 14 homegrown companies worth over $10 billion. In the
He said that like it's nothing. But think about how much 10 billion is. I know in the grand scheme of things it's nothing, but when I see him say only 14, I'm like, only 14?
same time, the US produced 241.
Okay.
Similarly,
Okay.
at the start of last year, the US hosted nearly 700 private companies valued at over $1 billion. Colloquially known
Bro, let's be fair. There's how many people in Sweden? 10 million. There's 350 million in America, right? So let's do the math. If you do the math, I think proportionally, I think it's probably much closer, right? There's so many people in America.
241. Similarly, at the start of last year, the US hosted nearly 700 private companies valued at over $1 billion, colloquially known as unicorns. The EU, meanwhile, had just over 100, although that number has grown a fair bit in the 18 months since. One notable exception, however, is Sweden. Sweden has produced a remarkable number of unicorns, including big names like Spotify, Klarna and iZettle, and now hosts a bunch of Europe's biggest...
I'm sorry, I don't know what Klarna is. I've heard of it. And iZettle, I've never heard of this.
AI companies like Sana, Legora and Lovable. On a per capita basis, Sweden consistently churns out more unicorns than any other European country, apart from maybe Iceland. So in this video, we thought we'd try to figure out why Sweden does so well with startups, and what lessons there might be for the rest of Europe. So let's get straight into it. When you ask Swedes about this, they often point to Sweden's knack for innovation. To be fair, Sweden does frequently top the EU's annual innovation scoreboard, and last year the World Intellectual Property Organization ranked Sweden second in innovation, only to Switzerland, and just ahead of the US.
Oh wow.
This is in some part a reflection of Sweden's impressive education system. In Sweden, university is free, and students can get loans for living expenses. Today, Sweden's workforce is impressively well educated. 1/3 of the population and more than half of the people between 25 and 34 have some form of higher education, which is...
This cannot be the only reason, because think about it. Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Ireland, Norway, they all have that too, right? And the Netherlands have all of that too. A lot of countries in Europe have all of that too. Plus in Norway, they have crazy oil reserve, right? So I think this is a good reason, but it doesn't differentiate them from a lot of their neighbor so far. So
levels of innovation. Sweden was also ahead of the curve on digital technology. In the 1990s, as part of a wider liberalisation drive, the Swedish government introduced tax incentives for corporate tech investment, digitised some public services, and invested heavily in fibre optic internet. By 2005, about 75% of homes had a computer, and Sweden was one of the world's most digitally connected countries. This has helped Sweden's tech...
Basically, they were ahead of the curve. It's a little bit how South Korea, we talk about how good they are right now, but if you go back 30 years, and that's what my wife Suji told me, South Korea used to be like what Thailand is today, in a way. South Korea and Thailand used to be very similar in terms of like everything 30 years ago, cost of living, everything, like how much money people make 30 years ago. And then South Korea went full innovation mode while Thailand stayed stagnant. And it brings them so much advantage these days, South Korea, from having like been ahead of the curve. And I feel like that's what Sweden did, trying to be ahead of the curve.
sector punch above its weight, a trend that has continued into the AI era. But these reasons don't feel like they fully explain Sweden's unique
That's exactly what I said. It cannot explain because there's other neighbors that have that in a way, right?
performance. After all, lots of other European countries
Exactly.
have innovative workforces
Exactly.
and great education systems. And the tech gap between Sweden and the rest of Europe has closed in recent
Oh, is that the tower in Malmo? I remember that because you guys host Eurovision and I did a reaction to Malmo. This looked like that tower. It looked more pretty from this angle though.
years. So, what else could it be? Well, as we see it, another big but underappreciated reason that startups seem to fare so well in Sweden is the depth of Sweden's so-called capital markets. For context, capital markets basically refer to any form of financing that doesn't involve borrowing from a bank. Capital markets are especially important for startups because banks don't generally like making what they see as unpalatably risky loans to startups. Capital markets can be split into two, the private
VC?
market and the public market. When we talk about the private market, we're basically talking about finding some venture capitalist
Yeah,
or
VC.
other private investor
Yeah.
who'll lend you the money. When we talk about the public market, we're basically talking about listing your company and selling shares in it on a publicly traded stock exchange.
Let me guess, the public market is more popular than the private one, right? In Sweden. He's gonna explain why, but I have my little idea.
Anyway, Sweden has remarkably deep capital markets in both the private and public markets.
Okay.
In the private markets, Swedish funds, including pension funds and insurance funds, are pretty massive relative to Sweden's GDP and invest more than their European counterparts in small cap companies. There's also a wide network that's more than their European.
Wow, look at the other country. Denmark, Ireland, Finland. The three countries that I named earlier, right? Then you have Germany, Austria. I think it's the average, Euro average. France, Italy, Netherlands, Spain. Yeah. A lot of countries that are doing quite well, actually.
Counterparts in small cap companies. There's also a wide network of so-called angel investors,
Yeah.
especially in and around Stockholm, many of whom got rich betting on the prior generation of Swedish unicorns. Sweden's public markets are just as good, as evidenced by the popularity of the Swedish stock market. According to an analysis by Dealogic, in the decade running up to 2024, over 500 companies listed in Sweden, more than the total number of IPOs in France, Germany, the Netherlands and Spain combined.
Wow.
And not miles away from the UK, despite the fact that the UK economy is about 6 times that
Yeah.
of Sweden. In 2025, Sweden actually saw more IPOs than even London, including a $4.26 billion IPO
Wow.
for Verisure, Europe's largest IPO in at least 3 years. IPOs are also remarkably popular with smaller companies, and Swedish firms are far more likely than their European peers to go public. All in all, Sweden has the deepest capital markets of any EU member state, and even deeper than those in the UK, despite it.
How many of you have invested in this company? Like small or medium cap? Because you need disposable income. And I know you guys in Sweden, you have disposable income. And maybe that's why on average you are doing better than the US or the UK is because these countries have less disposable income. So that might be why.
Its world-renowned financial sector, which
What I call disposable income is living paycheck to paycheck or not. Paycheck to paycheck means that at the end of the month, after you're done paying like your debt, the food and everything, you basically have zero money to invest at the end. That's what disposable income means. It means that after paying for everything and saving the money that you want to save, you basically have nothing left. Or you cannot even save. You have no disposable income, basically.
Swedish companies rely surprisingly little on foreign financing. So, why are Sweden's capital markets so great? Well, the fundamental reason seems to be that Swedish households are far more likely than their counterparts in the rest of Europe to actually invest their savings.
Bro, I have not pre-watched the video. It's just common sense. It's common sense.
Swedish households invest over half of their savings in stocks, more than twice the average in the euro area.
What? Wait, what?
Swedish households invest over half of their savings in stocks.
Half of your saving in stock? In America, there's not a loss, but the rule of thumbs in that if you can invest 15%, that's considered amazing. Now he's talking about half
Twice the average in the euro
of the saving, not of your salary. To be fair, but still.
area, whilst keeping just 19% of their assets in cash, the lowest in the EU.
Wow.
This is both good news for Swedish savers, who generally see better returns on their savings than other Europeans sitting on cash, and great news for Sweden's capital markets. So, why are Swedes so keen on investing? Well, it's in part because Swedes are pretty financially literate, and thus more aware of the fact that they'll get better returns by investing in stocks rather than sitting on cash. A World Bank study from 2018, for instance, found that Swedes were quite literally the most financially literate people in the world, matched only by Norwegians and Danes. But it's also a consequence of consistent public policy efforts to encourage investment. As far back as 1984, the Swedish government introduced Allemanspar, a product enabling ordinary Swedes to invest in stock markets, decades before most other European countries developed similar schemes. By 1990, there were already 1.7 million of these accounts, and subsequent rule changes in the 1990s allowed people to invest 2.5% of their pensions into stocks of their choice.
This is all alien to me. Like, I understand what he's saying, but it's alien in the sense that in Canada and the US, I've never heard of thing like this. You have to understand, I don't remember the statistic that was saying that in the US, like 50% or like 70% of all the stocks, like the investment in the S&P 500, for example, were owned by like the top 1% of people that invest or something. So basically, there's a huge percentage of the population that have very small amount invested into the stock market. They still invest, but they invest so little that most is owned by the people at the very top. So that's how market manipulation become very easy in the US. Now I'm guessing that in Sweden, the normal average salary man can invest, like he said, some 50% of his saving. So the top 1% of investors, they don't own 50% of the market or 70% of the whole stock exchange market in Sweden, which is, again, very different.
The government also introduced a new investment product called the ISK, which allows Swedes to invest a certain amount of their savings in funds and stocks at a lower tax rate. Sort of the Swedish equivalent to an ISA, but without a cash option. The ISK has become incredibly popular in Sweden, with nearly 4 million unique account holders in 2023,
wow.
Roughly a third of Sweden's entire population. The ISK has been so successful that the EU is apparently looking to it as a model for a future EU-wide saving and investment account, in the hopes of getting Europeans across the continent to invest more of their savings and thus improve the depth of Europe's capital markets.
Bro, how many debt do you have? I know you guys don't have student loan debt. You don't have like a healthcare debt. What kind of debt do you have? And how do banks make money? Because the industry in Thailand, in Canada, in the US is that bank make money primarily from borrowing from you and then to borrow to other people, right? But if everyone is able to invest like 50% of their savings, that means that you don't really need to have a credit card, or if you have a credit card, you always pay it back at the end of the month. So how do credit card company make money? How do bank make money? I know it sounds like a stupid question, but the credit card company and the bank, they make money where I'm from being predator, right? They predate on people that need something right now, they don't have the cash, so they loan them the money and they make money from interest, they make money from cash advance and things like this. If the Swedes don't need any of that, how do the credit card company and the bank make money?
But if an EU-wide account proves too politically contentious, the other lessons for European policymakers here is that improving financial literacy could be a relatively cheap and easy way of improving both household and national finances on the continent. As we mentioned earlier, the latest edition of our magazine, Too Long, is out now. Nuclear weapons, the spring issue immediately.
And why I know that this is true, by the way, that you have a great literacy, is that all of you understand what I'm saying, right? Everyone know I have an accent, and I've reacted to every single European country across multiple channels, and Sweden, Norway, and the Netherlands are the top 3 countries that understand me the most. Norway, Sweden, Netherlands. Then you have country like Finland. You have country like maybe Switzerland. But honestly, if I want a country that will every single person almost that watch a video will understand me, Sweden's in the top 5 in Europe by far. I'm not counting Ireland and the UK because obviously English is their first language. I'm mostly talking about country where English is not the primary language. It's gonna be Sweden. It's gonna be Finland. It's gonna be Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands. And it's funny because nobody talk about the Netherlands, but you guys, the way that they speak English and the way that they innovate in the Netherlands is incredible. It's no wonder that they are literally bordering you guys, the Nordic country, right? Technically, the Netherlands are doing so many things right that they should be a Nordic country. But the climate doesn't allow that, I guess. But yeah, thank you for the amazing suggestion. I'm sure that you guys have a lot to teach me in the comment. I need to understand more because I feel like there's must be more explanation as to why they are so different from Norway, Denmark, and Finland. Because when you think about it, right, all of these countries have the potential to do like what Sweden is doing. And the only thing that I can see as to why is that Sweden decided to be ahead of the curve. So they kind of had a head start. The same way that I said earlier that South Korea had a head start over Thailand for starting earlier. Maybe that's just it. Is that the other country will catch up and it's Sweden's job to be ahead of them. At the same time, I'm not sure that Sweden really want to be ahead of Norway and Denmark. They want to be cooperating with them in a way. It's a competition, but it's more so about making everyone's life a little bit better. So thank you for the amazing suggestion, guys.